or go to the web. And you had so many near-death experiences and came back with so many gifts that I just felt like you wouldn't get to them today. You're going to share just what you can share in an hour, and we're going to be blessed. So thank you.
Thank you. And before I get started, I just wanted to say, you mentioned the big C and all of that. Um, my mother passed from endometrial cancer that metastasized. And she sent a lot of messages, and, we did say one of them before that. But I thought this was interesting, and it helped a lot of people. One of her at the desk communications to myself, my daughter, and I think even a few mediums, was that she chose cancer. And that seems very, like, why would you? But part of it was, and I think also, her father had passed. He just stood up out of bed and passed from a coronary event, heart attack. And so there was no time to grieve. It was a shock to the system, to the soul. And she said that she didn't want that for us. She wanted us to have that time, and then knowing there was a deadline, so it wouldn't cause as much soul trauma um, if she were to just randomly pass. And and that is such a huge gift in the sense of we all know what cancer does to the body, and that she chose such a big love that she didn't want us harmed, and she was willing to go through that for that. Plus, she also said she passed it like once to that she could help us guide more on the other side and help me and my daughters with our spiritual journey and what I'm doing now from that side. She guides me. She helped souls that maybe don't have the energy or the knowledge yet, because believe it or not, we keep going and learning on the other side as well to connect to their loved ones. And she has volunteered at other mediumship groups. People have gotten back to me. Your mom showed up, said she'd help us. So that's what she's doing on the other side. But I just thought I would share that for anyone perhaps that has lost a loved one to that, or that is going through that, that, to trust the soul's path. And, that was very hard for me, losing my mom before my kids are even under two, and not having that to raise them. But on to my near-death experiences, I told Deb, I have spoken one before for this group, but maybe not some of you, that I would go over the first few, and then the newer two I haven't spoke about. And if you want more in depth, Deb, I think, has my previous one online that you can go through. But my very first near-death experience was at age 7. Um, I lived on 191 acres in rural Wisconsin. So it was a big farming community. My uncle lived across the street, and my grandpa's farm was there. I say this because my uncle and aunt happened to be over at our house that day. And we were all in the kitchen, and I remember my brother asking if he could go down to the pond with my uncle. Must have been spring because they were talking about the bluegills spawning, and they wanted to check how that was coming along and how fishing would be that year because we have it a private stock pond. So my mother being her, she's like, I am cooking. If you go, you have to take your sister. I don't want her underfoot. She was chopping vegetables. So, and my aunt never wanted to leave my uncle's side. So the four of us went down there. This was the fourth pond and the fifth pond. They were connected when in the spring. That's another reason I know it was spring from the thaw. So they stopped at the first entrance where the bluegill spawned. I went to the second entrance. I asked my aunt to take me down there because I like the deeper water. There was a smaller pond where all the tadpoles were. That's where the frogs bred. Anyway, so inquisitive me, I told my aunt I wanted to go out. They had created like a bridge. What do you call that? Out into the water, and with just like 2x4s and pallets. And I walked to the end of there. My aunt couldn't swim, neither could I, but she had a fear of water for that reason. So she stayed up the embankment, and I was down there. Um, and I remember I was looking off to the left hand side, but it must have been later afternoon because the glare of the water. So I was starting to feel a little lulled and woozy, like I would fall. And so I moved to the other side that the light wasn't in my face. And that's when my aunt's like, do you mind? I need to check on your uncle. She had kind of like a separation anxiety, very much so from him. Like she never wanted to be apart from him. Um, and people always say 7 years old and she leave you on a pier. Well, farm communities are different. You mature very young. And I was always, my mother called me an old soul. So she's like, can I go? And I'm like, yeah, that's fine. I'll be safe, you know. Um, the next thing I recall, honestly, it's like a big blank from that moment till me becoming aware I was thinking in the water and my air coming up. I have no memory of how I got in there. And it's very odd also because you'd think I'd fall forward, but I was feet first sinking. Um, and I remember just like screaming when I became aware. And I'm like, and then I was like, oh my God, that's my air. I'm going to die. And as soon as I said I'm going to die, I was like out of my body. And I could see my body sinking. And I had long hair just like I do now. And it was like laying in the water, just like my body was sinking. But I instantly, consciously, like connected to my brother's consciousness. And he was thinking whether he could swim to me faster or run the trail to get to me to save me. Because by then they'd heard me scream and everything else, I assume, and fall in. And my aunt was headed back towards me. That's what I could see. I was like hovering above my, my consciousness, I guess I would have to say. And I was seeing everything going on. But my brother, and I remember laughing. I was like, I wasn't even concerned about my body. I was just like, why does he think he can do that? You know, I'm like, there's no way. You know, like I was just more absorbed with like, what the heck is he thinking? And then my consciousness moved to my uncle, and he was freaking out because he's like, oh my God, she left her. You know, we're gonna get blamed. How am I gonna, you know, all of those thoughts, and trying to make his way to my aunt. And then of course my consciousness moved to my aunt, and she was trying to figure out save us without us both drowning since she couldn't swim. And she was thinking, well, I can hang on to that post at the end and just try to, you know, swoop her in, like kind of, you know, move the water, grab her hair, whatever I can grab onto. So that's what she was doing. She was making her way to me and trying to get me. As soon as I checked on all of them, my view expanded through like the whole neighborhood, like for miles. And then I connected with my mom's consciousness, and she was back in the kitchen. Like I said, she was cutting vegetables, and she was thinking about, you know, when we'd be home, what we found, if we did any fishing, everything was okay. But it was weird because as soon as I connected with her consciousness and I knew she was okay, my next awareness was being in this cloud of white light. And I knew there was like a guide to my left. And there was this expansive light in an archway. I felt like I was way down here like an ant, and this archway was way up here, and this light with a presence was coming towards me. Um, and there was the insurmountable, unexplainable, as you would call, unconditional love. I had never felt anything like that. It was like maternal love amplified beyond what we can imagine here. Same with the peace, of course. And I know many people report this, but I wish there were better words for the depth of that. That totally being loved for everything you were. It didn't matter how you lived your life, what you did. It was complete acceptance. Like, this is who you were supposed to be. That's what you went there to do, not judgment. And it was so overwhelming. And the light was like a zillion neons, you know, or LEDs. And I remember thinking, how, like, can I look? How can I be looking at this? You know, like I was still expecting to have a body. I didn't see anybody. And I was like, how can I even be looking at this? And I remember conversing, and it felt telepathic with this being. And I know from subsequent things, but not exactly what I saw. But I remember arguing with this being and seeing what I was supposed to come back to and what my life was supposed to entail. And I kept saying, no, you are not making me go back to that. It felt like I was there for years arguing, like, there's no way. I'm not living that life. How? No, I would never have chosen that. All of these things. And finally, like I said, what felt like forever, there was this booming voice. And I always joke, my spirit team always relates to songs and movies. It was very much like the Truman Show, where that big voice booms over the amplifier into an environment you thought was real. And it literally said, you must go back. You have more to do. It was a deep male voice. It was very authoritative. But somehow my soul knew, like, you do not argue. I was like, and I was like, no. And they're like, and so you still your personality and your everything. And I remember going, okay, well, you can make me go back to it, but you can't make me get in. Like, I'll go back to my body. And I remember being like with my body. I'm like, oh, there it is. They had brought it up to the embankment, laying on its side. And I was like, okay, well, I'm here. Because instantly I was back with my body after this voice told me there was no argument. And I remember that like there was no ill effects. I don't remember coughing up any water or anything. Um, I believe they commented I didn't speak till the next day. Um, and that night, like I replayed my near-death experiences over and over again. And I woke up the next morning and I was like, I clearly remember sitting at the base of our stairs in one of those old Victorian captain chairs, um, talking to my brother, and I was like, why did you think you could do that? You could never swim or run that fast. Who you think you are? And he just turned white as a sheet because I was telling him what I all saw. And he yelled for my mother. And my mother's like, came in. And I was like, and I'm like, well, I know I died, like I knew it. And it didn't seem odd to me. And, my family had a lot of paranormal experiences. So they didn't quite, it's not like they questioned it. They were like, okay. And through that, um, and I really think that experience happened. It was right around, like, it's the same age I lost my grandfather, who I was closest with in life. He was the only one who stood up for me, cared about me, like was there for me. Um, and I feel somehow it was very connected in the sense of either helping me process or knowing where he was going, in that sense. He died, as I mentioned, of a heart attack. My mother's father. So it was kind of interesting because after that is when some of, like Deb said, some of my abilities showed up. So I'd have prophetic dreams all the time or just knowing. And thankfully, my mother was who she was because she would be like my filter because things would always start to come true. They noticed it enough. So she would say, hey, Lori saw this, or she'd find a way to reach out to them without telling them about my abilities. And so there was a lot of years of that, but some were very hard. After that experience, I could tell when the soul was leaving the body. And usually it happens for about 2 weeks once the soul's made that decision. And you see the energy leave. I understand it now, but as a child, they looked very much like wax dummies, like they were kind of melty and white, because that energy was leaving, and it would freak me out because and I began to correlate that that's what it meant. And so when I see somebody like that, finally I asked, I just, I don't know. I prayed or asked. I said, I can't see that. I don't care if I don't mind knowing when they're leaving, but seeing that was too traumatic as a child. I mean, here I am, 7 or 8, seeing these people look like zombies. You know what I mean, in that sense of their coloring and their demeanor melting. So that was kind of difficult. And through that process, there were many other things. But I think the hardest thing, I always say, I don't think I came back to the same timeline. Or it was just the light I carried, or that I was so different. My family was hunters and farmers, and they had this approach to life and death, and they had, they were drinkers, so they just didn't have the same mentality I did. I couldn't process the cruelty kind of, and even how they treated me. The cruelty was turned towards me, and I don't recall that before my first death experience. It's like everything changed overnight with that experience. Um, and it's kind of interesting now that I'm older, as I've said, with the childhood. I'm very thankful for them now and the things I went through. And like she said, and in spirit told me why I chose those. They literally said to me that in order to do the healings I do and move through the quantum field and to be able to reach people the way I do, I had to know those frequencies. It's like dialing in. If I had never gone through it, how could I leave somebody out of it? They refer to like What Dreams May Come, where Robin Williams went to rescue his wife in the dark place. If you haven't seen it, it's an amazing movie. But but it was similar like that. Like you need to experience these things in order to know the depth of them. and where to reach people. Like it's literally like dialing in a radio. So I understand it now, and it expanded who I was. But at the time, and how I think societal conditioning is, the victim mentality, I was abused. And yeah, on a 3D level, yes, I suppose. But now I consider it a gift. My childhood was a gift because part of it also was that we had 191 acres. After I came back, I literally had an experience. I told my mom I was supposed to be a priest, and she looked at me funny and she's like, "You can't be a priest in our religion." 'Cause I was raised loosely Catholic. And I was like, "Well, then that's not my religion. Nature is my church." And I literally spent almost every day out in nature and at the ponds and in the fields. I remember I came back seeing these like melodious things, like they were just noises. Now most people call it light language or something else, or the noises that they heard in heaven. I think I was mimicking. Because what they've told me through all this process is each soul has this individual frequency that sounds like a song, and it's unique to you. And that's how people, even though they don't realize it, are dialing into you energetically. And that's one of the abilities I was given, is to read people. It's almost like bioacoustics by their voice. If you've not looked into that science, it's where they are able to read patterns in your voice. It can tell you what you're lacking vitamin wise, what's going on with the emotional. It can tell everything by your voice. Spirit has told me the future of healing is sound and frequency. So that makes sense to me. And my daughter, another odd thing about me is every member of my family is the near-death experiencer and a spiritual experience. So my daughter has told me, like, in one of her experiences, like each of us is represented by this crystal, like crystal bowls, like it makes this sound, it makes this music. So I always thought that was really interesting. So my life kind of went on with that. When I was in my early 20s, I went to be a medical assistant. And through that work is when the first sign of being a medical intuitive, and they've asked me to explain what that is. Some people call it a medical medium. What I can do is scan your energy and your body parts. A big talking point for me is about body consciousness. We have a soul and a spirit consciousness, a consciousness that's more like our spirit, but our body has a consciousness. And becoming a Reiki master teacher, I learned each organ is having an energetic agreement to be that organ, but it also has consciousness and it speaks to me. Different voices, different things. They'll even complain if you're crossing your ankles, okay? They have a voice. And so through this process, I am able to like scan people's energy. I can see where different things are going on, or where the body will even tell me where it was hurt, even in birth. So if you've never had anybody look at you or it's never been validated, it will take me on this journey. And some things you may not even remember, but the body's holding on to that emotional energy that I was traumatized. And that's where a lot of these things develop because we're unaware that it holds this consciousness. We don't, as a society, we're not taught to speak to our body. That's silly, but our body holds emotion. It holds memory, even cellular memory of our ancestors, especially. These things need to be released. This is what I do through the quantum field. So that started to show. Like one time I had a 5-year-old girl come in, and I knew it was her appendix. I don't know how, because at that time I wasn't that aware, but I go to the doctor, it's her appendix. He's like, "No, yeah, whatever, He literally did. He goes in there and he came out just like my brother, white with his jaw open, going, "How did you know? I would have missed that. She's got to get up to the ER stat." Well, this was a learning moment because that ER was in competition with our ER because they were both contracted. I was in urgent care, but they were all ER doctors under contract. And they're like, no, she doesn't have that incentive. Her appendix rupture. And she had to be brought back. So that was a big ego lesson, like spirit stuff. Like, why did you tell me if this still is going to happen? But they're like, these people, it will make them be a better doctor. They needed this experience to see what ego can damage, So that's when I realized, okay, I'm not, there was one doctor that worked for us. He's like, you have this ability. And I'm like, oh. He didn't say what, but he's like, there's something different about you. The minute he met me. But he was from, I think, the Middle East. So they're more open to that, I feel, sometimes before we were. Because this is like late 90s, right? So anyway, um, I went on with different things and different things. So my second near-death experience isn't I had more conscious memories of it later on, but at the time, what happened? We had been trying for years to get pregnant. I'd gotten pregnant, but I had a visitation from my deceased grandmother on my mother's side, and she came to me and she told me, "I'm sorry, honey, this baby is not yours to keep. Um, there'll be others. Please don't be scared." And she showed me the clinic room and where I go to see my OBGYN. And then there was a calendar there, and she showed me the date. And that's the exact date that I started to hemorrhage and have to be brought to the ER in extreme pain. And because of that, they didn't have any prior information on me. So they rushed me in for a DNC, and they gave me too much anesthesia. And I stopped breathing and had to be intubated and was bleeding out. And I went home for healing. They told me, I just went to this room. I've seen it since, but at the time I didn't, of this healing space, because that's all I went home for. They said to have these children, the children that I have, they have a lot of experiences and abilities and pre-birth and in between life memories that validate my own experiences. And anyway, so they told me I went home for healing so I could have babies. And the autopsy of my daughter confirmed that, because my body made a baby, but it didn't interconnect all its systems. So my doctor told me that if I wanted to have a baby, I needed to start again right away, whether I felt up to it emotionally or not, or I could lose the chance to have children. So I did, and I had my what people call rainbow baby. And I had premonitions about him before he was born as well, and his abilities. But the interesting thing I want to say about this is all three of my before I go on to my next NTE, all three of my children came to me before they were born or while I was carrying them um, about their delivery. My son warned me he would the cord would be wrapped around his neck, and that if I pushed, I would kill him. And I told my doctor this by then, because I always knew instantly when I was pregnant as well, because I sensed the energy coming into me. So he got where he's like, just listen to her. He told the nurses, listen to her. And I was like, and I'm so thankful for him. But I was like, I can't push, he did come out, cord around his neck twice. I think he had a birth NDE because he was like blue and not registering and purple. Um, Anywho, so that was accurate. Then I had my second daughter, like within 2 years. Same thing, except that she warned me that they would want to do a cesarean because she was stuck. She came in posterior. And she's like, don't let them do it. Just trust. And so when that happened, all of a sudden they're like, she's stuck. Her vitals are going up and down. Prepare for emergency DNC. I'm like, no. I said, just let me move how I need to. And I literally did like this weird exorcist type twist of my whole body. The nurses tried to hold me down. But again, this is interesting. My OB was not in practice. And this doctor who had come over, I think from China, she was delivering. And she's like, let her be. Her body knows what it's going to do. Because they were trying to hold me and pin me and strap me. And boom, my daughter came flying out. So that was accurate. And my third daughter was like, she's like, and she even remembers being in the womb, my third daughter. And she's like, I wanted out of there. And she came flying out like a football. I warned the nurse. I'm like, she's here. No, she's not. I'm like, look, she is here. I'm like, I cannot, and move. And she looked up, and there was my daughter's head coming out. And she's screaming for the doctor. He literally snapped on the last glove before he barely caught her, because she was like, I want it out of there. And I didn't even tell her the story at the time that she told me that about her birth, so that's kind of funny. But she's like, it was icky and I could see all these things and it was gross and I wanted out. Totally fits her personality. Anyway, my third death, that was the one at 28. My third death experience was about 35, if I recall. I had some autonomic and nervous system issues, and some of those play into my other death experiences. What happened is I lost blood flow to my brain, and I was in the living room with my husband and my daughter, and I was talking to my husband, and I just started backing up. I'm like, something's not right. I don't feel right. What is going on? And all of a sudden, like my consciousness like went gray, like I was about to pass out. He said I went like another 6, 8 steps, and I fell backwards against the door jamb and cracked my head. Not open, but I mean, I whacked my head. He said I slid down, slumped over, and wasn't breathing, and he was freaking out. But for me, it all happened in an instant that I was out of my body. And I was in this place I kind of referred to at the time, Heaven City, because I didn't know what to call it. And I was on this marble like bench in this area with clouds and white. And I was sitting next to my mother. But I even said to this being, like, you're not my mother, you're not her energy. And she's like, how? Oh, okay. She's like, well, I did it for your benefit. We wanted to keep you calm. And she was sitting next to me. And this is the only time I recall seeing any part of a body. She was rubbing my leg and saying, it's okay. You're okay. I'm like, no, no, no. I got to get back to my daughter. Because, I knew I had like collapsed in front of my daughter and she would be scared. And, but part of this was, they told me I had done enough now. Like I'd put in enough balance. And I had this knowing, or they conveyed it to me, that there's this balance, like the energy, the ripples that we create through all that is, not just here. They even tell me the reason I speak and do these talks and different things isn't necessarily always for the people in the room. We're teaching new souls coming in. It's going out to anyone that can tune into it, past, present, future. And so through that, I understood that, that energy that we put out, the love, the balance of the things that we do here matter. You know how they have that, is that a Greek god? There's a depiction of the scale, right? And that's kind of how they conveyed it to me. Anyway, they said I had done enough and I could stay. And I instantly said, no, my daughter needs me. And through this whole remembrance and the fact that I was choosing love to come back to her may have granted me the ability to return. I am not sure, because everything, I know we've heard this if you hear near death experience, like time is different. It all felt at once. And I recall that I said that I needed to get back to her. But the reason was, in a previous lifetime, I'd been a cobbler in 1800s England, and she was my daughter. And I had died on her at the same age in that lifetime. And I didn't want to do that to her soul again, because in this current lifetime, she remembers that lifetime and having to like support themselves on the wharf and do all these things, working on the dock to survive, because I was their only, back then, I was the breadwinner. I'd gotten robbed and shot, and there's a whole thing with that that I'll skip for right now. But the interesting part is that those robbers had shot me under my right ribs, and in this lifetime, I had horrendous pain there. I had been from doctors to the time I was little. I'd almost passed out sometimes. I remember one time almost passing out in the grocery store. I knocked a ton of cans down. My mom's like, "That's it. We're taking you to a specialist." They could never find anything. But because in this instance, I was able to forgive them because it was accidental, because it was the old musket type handgun, hair trigger. One robber pulled the other, let's go, and it fired and shot me. And that was never their intention. And by forgiving that, I released that pain and that cellular memory. So I released that pain. I have not had it since that experience. But that's where that quantum entanglement comes in of our other lifetimes. And there is a lot of that carries over. And that's why I think and speak about quantum healing. because that's healing through that space of all that is, that creation space. And because of my NDEs and having so many, I can return to that space, and I open what I call portals, um, energy portals, to literally connect to that time and space in real time, because there is no time. That's the illusion. So you're able to connect people quite literally with the energy of them, let's say at 7 years old, and help them release it, and have a conversation with them as a child or whenever this trauma took place. Um, and that's what I mean when I talk about the quantum field. Um, and so that's why I have such an affinity to do that work, because I've seen personally how powerful that is, to have these forgivenesses, not even just from this lifetime. My fourth near-death experience happened at 48, which is an autonomic nervous system issue. Prior to that event, I had a few things happen where, like my body would literally freeze, or I couldn't talk, or I couldn't swallow, or I'd stop breathing for a second. And I've come to know it's because of a huge allergy to MSG. It's not always labeled in certain foods, but that's my trigger. That's what happened for my fourth and sixth near-death experience. Anyway, so I knew something wasn't right. I told my family something wasn't right. And when I went to bed that night, I just said, I don't feel right. Well, that night I stopped breathing in my sleep. And the first thing I was aware of was being with what I call parts of my soul group. And they were with me. Two were in front of me, and I could sense my daughter and my husband were both very much alive, but their higher aspects were with me. But it was my twin flame in front of me, and another friend over here. And this particular friend was telling me if I wanted my body, I had to get back in it now. Concurrently, it felt like I was getting a lecture by my twin flame saying, at my level of light, I needed to watch my words and what I said and what I created. And this is where I learned the power of thoughts, words, intention, and emotion. And so he went on to tell me all about how emotions with thoughts and words create, but they especially said the written word. There is power in that word, if you think about it, because there's this flow of soul energy that comes through you and out of you when you physically write the word. You are putting energy into each thing that you create as you were. You know how they say, I think in the Bible, and then there was the word. Very powerful. I did not know how powerful it was. What happened was I had jokingly wrote on a meme in Ed Mattina's near-death experience group on Facebook, the largest NDE group, if you're not familiar with it, because somebody had posted a meme saying lame ways we died. And a lot of us were joking about how we'd like to go next time. And I said, I want to go like grandpa, not like the passengers in his car, I was joking, which meant in cancel, cancel, cancel. I don't want to do that again. But that is how and why they were yelling at me and explaining to me that I was at such a high light frequency, things manifest faster. And they showed me all how that works. The earth has a density, so to speak, or it did. We're moving into a higher light and the density, and that's why this is important. But it has a density that everything we create, there's like this buffer. So it doesn't instantly happen. Think about every thought you've ever had or thing that you have set in motion when you're so emotional, angry, happy, whatever, that you have said. If it instantly created like it can in the voided creation, there would be utter chaos here. So Earth has that protection of us for us to learn emotion and how to control it, how to use it properly, and what I call wield it, and create it from a conscious perspective, a loving perspective. We come here to learn to create from a place of love. That's one of the many things about being here that I was told. So while he's telling me all of this, she is instructing me about my body. She's like I said, she said, if you want your body, you have to get into it now. And I'm like, well, how do I do that? And this is the interesting thing, and I've only heard it in one other NDE. I was told I had to swallow. The body has consciousness. I don't know, but it said I had to swallow. And as soon as did, I did this huge gasp, like, and then my heart literally felt like a horse kick to the chest from the inside as it started to beat, but it was just hammering. But I still couldn't feel my body. I remember her calling it a vehicle. I'm like, how do I start this vehicle? And that's when she said, well, and then I'm like, they're like, can you feel anything? I'm like, I can't feel anything. This body is not responding. And then they said, we'll do a systems check. I know this stuff sounds crazy, but it's do a systems check. And I knew to move my energy from my feet upward. And as I did, that was the most painful thing, more than my 27 hours of labor with my son that I have ever experienced. It was only for a few seconds, but horrendously painful. All my nerves came online at once. Imagine, like, you know how your hand or your arm is when it falls asleep. Can you imagine that throughout your whole body? Yeah. And then I was aware of my body, and I remember like literally shaking for like 20 minutes, probably from my medical background. Yeah, maybe I was in a little bit of shock. I had been gone long enough, like I said, for my body to not be responsive. And it really kind of freaked me out because this is another thing. And it reflects something that happened in my husband's near-death experience. But the longer you are on this earth, the more ripples you create, the more lifelines and lifetimes you affect. So I understood that if like I didn't come back, all the lifelines that would be affected, and that I would have to like not answer to, but be a part of my energetic balance. And I also remember saying, get me right back in there now. Like I wanted back in my body, because I understood what a gift it was, to have this body, and this experience. I'm like, I worked too many lifetimes to miss what's coming. And they showed it, like me, all the things, like all these preparations, all these skills through all these lifetimes for these abilities that I have now, like, and what I was supposed to bring forward. And I'm like, I don't want to miss the thing. But the part that freaks me out, and I knew it had happened, is those two friends, the friend that I mentioned about my body and my twin flame, both experienced the experience with me. They contacted me the next day, and he was like, I know, he always reads my energy. He can tell when I'm sick. He can tell when I'm way out there doing quantum work. And he's like, your energy left. What happened to you? You were gone. And I remember I had to do this test with you. Like I had to drink from your body and do this whole test. He's like, and I remember there was a test, but I couldn't remember the details. So then I was really freaking out, like that really happened, because I always wanted to deny. I'm very skeptical, even though I've had these experiences. And she came to me the next day and said, she goes, what happened? She was like, I had a vision. I was standing at your bed and you were dead. That did happen. Like I was in tears, like, oh my God, not again. Like that. No, because I had so much more to leave because I had these children in this life, and, my husband and son are disabled and I'm their caregiver, like everyone needed me, and so that was really hard for me, to accept that it happened. Now, my fifth death experience, I wasn't even sure, wasn't even going to call it fifth death experience. This is the newer one. But my other NDE friends and an interviewer or two that I've mentioned it to are like, that's the near-death experience. And it is the only one that I've seen the white tunnel of light in that sense. And this happened at the IANDS conference in Washington, D.C., of all things. And it was pretty wild in the sense that even getting there was like, I should have wrote a book. I mean, I had everybody in stitches. Everything that could go wrong went wrong. And even my daughter's like, I don't think you're supposed to go. I get now, probably not. But it was a profound experience, being there in that capacity and doing the speakers and being a speaker myself and everything else. For those that don't know, I used to work for IANDS. I still volunteer, but I used to be the social media coordinator. And so I was working there. But because of the calamity of errors, like my car wouldn't start, a neighbor I don't even know had to take me to the airport. And then it was turbulence and everything else. And so we literally landed like point down. And so I got like what I call uh, concussion syndrome because I've had so many hits to the head, it set me off. So what happened that particular night, my roommate was sitting by my head and she was reading some stuff from this arcana that's like an oracle thing and tarot or something. She was reading something to me and I drifted off and she went to do some stuff. And all of a sudden I had this awareness. Once again, I stopped breathing. And I've been checked for sleep apnea, okay? So I don't have that. But I stopped breathing in my sleep and I was in this space of light with this being. And I remember having this conversation and I cannot recall it now. I think it was about spiritual things and things that were supposed to happen. And as we were talking, everything got really dark. So I don't know if I was like in the middle of something else and then I started to cross over because all of a sudden it got really dark. And forgive me, I haven't told this one very much. So, but then I could see this pinpoint of light, like a small circle in the distance. I'm like, oh my God, that's the light. And I was so excited to see this light. Like, finally, I get to go home. They're going to let me, like, there it is. And as I was like, which it was coming closer and closer to me, or I was coming closer and closer to it, I really can't say. And I was like, I get to go home. And like, there was all these thoughts to that. And I was almost in the light and I felt this tight grip on my arm. And someone, I think it was the being that had been with me. I'm not sure. People say it was Archangel Gabriel because he's the only one that can affect you physically. And I'll get to that point. But grab my arm and say, you cannot go. It's not your time. You can't go. You can't do this. I'm like, but I want to go home. And it was painful. I remember it being painful. And they literally like grabbed me back. And like, I felt like being like whipped back. I say yeeted, but my daughter says that's the wrong term. Yeeted means the opposite. And then it was weird. I was in this place. I was in the hotel room, but it was like I was in the in-between. That's what I call it. There was absolutely no sound. It was the perfect layout of the room, but none of it was color. And it was only that room. And I couldn't reach anything and I couldn't do anything. I was like stuck, like they pulled me back too far or not far enough. I was in this space and all I could think about was like, oh my gosh, where am I? What do I do? I recognize this place. I don't know what it is. I'm like, I can't interact with it. It wasn't the hotel room in the sense that there was lights and everything else. And I'm like, but I remember remembering my roommate and I'm like, yeah, that's right. Keisha's with me. I can't die. Just leave her here. Well, what that traumatized her? She was just coming out on her spiritual path. And I'm like, where is she? And I remember hearing this like yelling, like my soul was screaming for her. And all of a sudden, like I heard her name, like calling for me. And all of a sudden the room started to fill with color and light. And then I became aware. And she comes rushing up to me. I'm like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. Like I was so upset because I was like, not again. And she's like, what? I'm like, and I explained to her what happened, everything else. And I had these marks on my arm, fingerprint marks. And by the next day, they were dark, dark purple, like somebody had just totally like into me. This is the first time, that I really had any like physical proof that I went through something. And we even showed a few people, and even a lady that heads one of these mystic schools, and she's like, wow, like she, looking at my energy and those marks, to test, to make sure it wasn't something I gripped myself or anything weird, to validate it. I still do not know, like I said, what being pulled me out or told me I couldn't go. And it wasn't even till a few months ago that I literally grieved, because I remember how badly I wanted to leave and go home, like how excited I was. And I'm like, but you brought me back. Like I was really upset. And but there was almost like this panic, like it wasn't the light I was supposed to go to. Like by this being, like, no, 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 this isn't where you go. Like it was really interesting. I'm still processing that one in that sense. Um, but my sixth near death experience was very similar in symptoms and everything else, and the reason um, as my fourth. Uh, it was autonomic nervous systems, and I did quit breathing. Um, but I went to this space that was like this black velvet that felt like it was hugging you. It felt like the womb. But I was, may I say the word pissed? Because through a bunch of my spiritual transformative experience and everything else, I had made this agreement, like, so I was really angry. Like, I did everything you said. Why am I here again? What? All this stuff. And they said to me, there's only death because you continue to believe in it. There is no death. They're like, and I got all this like telepathic information in the sense of we equate life to a physical body. But just like in my first near death experience where they told me we're only in the larval stage of the spiritual evolution, this body is the larva stage. So they're like, you're so attached to life being matter that you think when it leaves you, it's the end, when it's only the beginning. And and they said I kept creating these NDEs because I thought that was the easiest and fastest way to go home, to connect to source, when source is always with me, and I needed to stop. But also through this experience, this being showed me, I mean, there was love, but not the love of that light in the first. But there was utter peace, just peace, like you were being held. But this being wanted me to see why it created life, why it created this fractals of itself. It let me feel the most devastating loneliness that I can't, just like that love that I cannot even fathom or give words to make you feel what it felt like for it to be alone and conscious without anything to share its love, its ideas, or anything else with. And it's like, it's a gift to be incarnated. You're literally me experiencing my creation and expanding everything that I am. In that sense, it showed me how it fractionated to one, and this one to share its ideas and expand upon them. But then that one had new ideas and wanted something else to expand, and how it just kept creating and creating and creating these fractals of what we call source. All to have somebody to understand us. Can you imagine that loneliness of not being understood? Even source felt that. That's why he wanted us to have that connection to that we are this oneness. We might have created these separate conscious forms to experience life. And when Deb was talking about purposes and said I would speak on that, through this experience, the purpose was to just be, to have this experience. I did have spiritually transformative things that told me that, like, they see this as like going to an amusement park because it's so different and so contract. And the depth of the emotions that we can feel here, they don't. They come here to learn that and remember that, because you have to have that level of emotion in order to create. One of my spiritually transformative things that I share with my husband is coming through a portal to Earth to learn emotions, because our planet or wherever dimension, wherever we were from at that time, I have vivid memories of it, was kind of dying away because nothing new could be created. They had lost their ability to connect and feel. So they came here to learn that again. So through all of that, I learned that how important emotions were through those three experiences of knowing how emotion helps in the creation process. And if I may speak, I think I have a few more minutes. I did had this quantum hypnosis regression done through someone who studied with Dolores Cannon in person. And one of the things that came through with that, which I was not expecting, it wasn't a question I had, was about creation and the being that they said I was love. And that other people, their fractal represented other emotions, like mirrors of love, whether it's envy, hate, whatever. In this one, they were showing me envy. We're still a mirror of love. They still were love. Envy was loving something that somebody else had created, feeling you could create it, but it was still love. And so each person carried an emotion that they represented, and mine was love. Where like they said my husband's was envy at that time, like to embody and reflect and mirror that so you can learn and expand. There was much more to that quantum hypnosis, but I thought it was really interesting. And I just put together, like yesterday when I was thinking about this talk, from the time I was little, when they say write your name, I always did write love. Like, and in that quantum hypnosis, they called me love, literally. And they said that I put love into the grid to incarnate, to balance out all those other emotions, to keep balance in this quantum hypnosis. And I do have it privately online, but if somebody ever wanted to listen to it, it's like 2.5, 3 hours. You're welcome to it, but I'm just saying I don't have it publicly available. But it is very interesting on that creation aspect. But I just wanted, I think, just to say through all of this, it's kind of interesting because from the very first one, I was like, no way, don't take me back there. And by the last three, I'm like, get me back in there. I'm not going to miss a thing. And when I say that is because of the change in light frequencies and consciousness that is currently growing on this planet right now. And what they showed me is a lot of us came in here to anchor that light and that new frequencies of thought and creation. One of my higher aspects through some of my experiences is what you would call a grid worker. And her name is, I think, Sabrina. And I think it was in right before or after my third near-death experience is when I started experiencing seeing grids. I've seen the horizontal and I've seen the honeycomb grid. One of the grids they showed me was a bright neon blue, the square one. I think that's horizontal this way. I'm bad with that. And they showed literally a copy of me on every pinpoint, every timeline. Now I understand that with those aspects of love throughout creation. And I've also seen remember the movie The Matrix, where that is in numbers drop down. But for me, it was letters. They would give me messages. I also had experience it was right after my IANDS experience that I was waking up and all of a sudden I could see all of these glowing numbers just like a Rolodex in front of my face. And literally I heard spirit go, just hold still, we're almost done. And it was all these light codes. And they said that we each carry all these different codes as keys. That's where keys comes in for each other. And there's no random meeting. There's no coincidences. The people you meet, you agreed to have this change of codes and light codes to expand each other. But keys also came into my, I started handing them out after my fourth death experience because I believed I had this knowing that they were keys because through the quantum field, with these portals, they each have like these keys to them that unlock them. And so I was kind of obsessed with keys. I always was anyway. I grew up in a house with skeleton keys. Um, but that we each carry some of these keys um, that unlock certain aspects of our DNA, of our memory, of our light codes. So I was really moved by that. But I started giving them out to high school graduates, literally telling them that that anything they chose to experience was theirs, that they are limitless. And that's as far as keys mean to me, and that we we each have, I think people call it a soul purpose of why we came here. There are some people who did come here just to have the experience. And then there's some of us who literally, as my team says, I came here on a mission with a mission team to do certain things. I always talk about how I don't feel everyone is here the same or their consciousness is here the same. So one of my key things with all of this was in learning to respect sovereignty. What I create and what I experience and my timelines that I experience may not be the same as everyone else. So I don't tell you what to experience. I just want to give you the opportunity, the key to unlock more in your experience, that there are things beyond what you've already experienced that are available to you. But it's our soul's choice whether we choose that or not. And there's another thing I wanted to share. I had a spiritually transformative experience with Archangel Michael, and he took me out of body because I was very angry because some things physically had revisited me that I had healed. And I was like, I agreed to be of service. How can I be of service when you keep doing it? Like my body keeps falling apart. Why? Like I was so angry. He took me out of body and he showed me. He said, I can't remove what you've already brought into your experience. We bring it from that quantum field. I'm talking about this energetic field into the physical. He goes, I can't change what you've already pulled into your experience. I can only ease your attachment to it so that it moves through your experience faster. And he showed me, like, even though we have made soul plans, he said, where free will comes in is the depth to what we experience it. So let's say whether the choice was mine, whether it was a cold or pneumonia. The intensity was how much I fed into it, how much I feared it, how much emotion and thought process I put into that and pulled it into my experience. And he showed me all the times that I had did that, because we're so quick to like not take accountability and responsibility that like, I didn't do that to myself. Yeah, I did. Very much so. And so that was very interesting to me, of how creation works in that aspect, how we take a small thing and make it such a big thing. And that's okay, however you want to experience it in your experience. One thing I forgot to share about my, and then I'll end it there with my fifth death experience with IANDS is after I had that experience, I'm up here trying to introduce speakers and I'm trying to watch them and record them. And all of a sudden I could clearly see their deceased friends and people who had just died are like with them and joking, and they're leaning on them and they're making me laugh. And I'm like, no, I got to be serious. And I've seen spirits when I was young from the side, but I mean, these were full on apparitions with them. And I'm going, what? Seeing that. And I could see people's light, like whether they embodied the Christ light. I met somebody who had the Christ light, and other people were like, the energy was trailing behind them. So I think I was like still in that in between, that I could see both things. And that was another validation for me that had happened. And people were also commenting. I had at least 5 people stop me like, oh my God, you're light, including the person that I said was Christ. She's like, so are you. You got this huge orb of light around you. And she's like, what happened to you? Like, who are you? She followed me. But I had somebody say, like, I came through like a huge wave of love. They'd never felt it. Like, I had 2 people stop me about that. So I knew like something had happened, something made me a little different. And also after my talk, they had me do some healings. The other lady was like, "No, you're supposed to go down there." And it was weirdly profound. Like I instantly knew what was on each person's soul, like on their heart, what was wrong with them. Within a few minutes, like I just would say this and this, and it's okay, and this and this, and may I touch, may I bless you. They wanted me to touch them. There's something significant about touching people to the third eye with this, um, with the palm of your hand. But I had to ask for permission, obviously, but it was weird. That was very weird. But that was part of that whole experience as well. So I thought I would share that, how that is. But the takeaway I think I give most times about love is all that is, because that's really, you know, the bottom line of it, of everything is of the light, is of creator, whether we want to judge it bad, good, light, dark. There is no light without dark. It's a balance. It's that scale. And it's very beautiful. And the other thing is about, like I said, body consciousness. Um, very important how we treat and talk to our body, and how we create through that. Um, and our belief system affects everything we create, and can put us sometimes in a box of what we're limited to experience. Um, so I've always tried to keep myself open that anything is possible. And perhaps that's why I've had so many experiences. We didn't get into all the paranormal, and that's fine. Or all the things I've taken away. And I'll let Deb or you guys ask me any questions if we have time. But um, right now, what Spirit has told me is we're in a massive movement of change, and the truth will come to light. That's what they keep telling me over and over. And that it is so important to be our authentic self and true to ourselves without judgment right now, because the world needs that authenticity, the truth of the light frequency. And I just thank you all for being here on this planet in this physical timeline with me at such a beautiful conjunction of creation, because it's amazing what it has the capacity to create. Because they keep telling me like that version of what we call Eden, if in spirituality, will return. So I'm very much looking forward and thankful to be a part of that. So thank you all for who you are and what you do in the world.
Thank you, Loreli. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Like I said in the beginning, I do not want to have a near-death experience. I'd rather live through yours. And you've had lots, and you've learned a lot, and you shared a lot with us today. I really appreciate that. And do you have any questions, anyone that wants to ask a question? I had one, I missed the movie you said in the very beginning to see. Did you recommended a movie?
Was that What Dreams Might Come? Was
Where
it that
Dreams
one?
Okay, we're
With
dreaming.
Robin Williams. Yes, yes. Mm-hmm.
What dreams may come? Robin
Mm-hmm.
Williams. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah, I haven't seen that. Okay.
Really? Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
No, I haven't seen that. So we'll have
Spirit
to.
has shown me like it tries to communicate through movies. There's quite a few that are very much. And the thing with some of that too is there's different levels of reality. Like anything can be experienced here. So people say they've had galactic experience, or this is a simulation and it's like a computer sim game. I've had tons of experience that validate that, but I've also had tons of experiences that validate the whole spiritual aspect. Like, it's all here. And that's what's so beautiful about it. Everything is here to experience. Yeah.
Well, I must not have a very good imagination. I'm not experiencing as much as you have for sure, and others. But maybe I'm not. My soul isn't is developed, right? Maybe that's it.
Yeah. I mean, and some souls, like I said, they have mastered it. And I was told I had, but like their purpose isn't to have all of this.
Mhm.
You know what I'm saying? And and it's because they've done all of this.
Yeah,
you know, so, each lifetime is different. And yeah.
yeah, that makes sense. That you're experiencing different things on different lifetimes. I always thought my purpose was to learn how to forgive. And I recently had someone do Tony did Akashic Records, and she said that mine was more gratitude, to feel more gratitude in this lifetime. But I think if you can forgive people, you do have gratitude. Sort of
Yes. Yes.
like we were
Gratitude
saying.
is huge in creation. It really is. To be thankful in that moment, for everything that you are. Often we associate gratitude with material or life circumstances, but how spirit, and that was rather recently, conveyed it to me. It was the gratitude to just be,
Mhm.
and and not thankful because it serves you. And it was just interesting, especially with one thing I want to say, and they're just calling me to say this that I didn't share, is with body consciousness about gratitude, is that most people are not as in tune to their body to actually have a conversation. And we forget that pain and anxiety is literally the only language that our body has to tell us that it needs attention, or something isn't right, or they don't like what we're doing. And often we're like so angry at pain and tell it to go away. And why do I have to be in this kind of pain? But the pain wants that validation, just that you've heard. So it's very important to give gratitude and thanks and say, thank you for bringing this to my attention. I am thankful that you're showing me that you need something, along those lines. And I think it's something we very much forget to do,
Yeah, definitely.
because we don't give gratitude to our body in the way that we need to, because without what they call the vehicle, it's like our ship to experience Earth with. We'd have no way to experience the senses without it, without that energetic agreement. It literally is an agreement with that. I had a whole thing about that as well, but I'm just saying, like, it is an agreement, and they're doing it from a place of love. They're agreeing to be this body for you, and we forget that and don't give the gratitude it deserves.
Yeah, that's a good thought.
I know it's weird, but it's very true.
Anyone else have any insights? Anything? No? Well, Loreli, thank you so much for your time and all your wisdom and sharing all that with us. It's a lot. I know that you've spent probably hours and hours trying to process everything that you've experienced, and you probably continue to learn and continue to process and try to put it into those words. And I think my takeaway will be that our words are very powerful, and um, they can, I used to say to my children, they can cut you like a knife and scar you forever, or they can uplift you and do good things. But
Yep,
we
exactly.
we don't always think before we speak, do we?
Now when we're emotional, and that's where that whole mindfulness comes in. Yeah.
Absolutely.
They tell me the words that are spoken may not affect this lifetime. That's the whole ripple thing. Like, you may not experience it, but somewhere a version of you will. So that's why it's important what we create. Yeah.
Very
Thank you
nice.
so much, Deb. I so
Yeah,
appreciate this space.
well, thank you so much. Again, thank you. Thank you.
Much love.
Thank you, Mary, and thank you, Nancy, for coming on. We'll see you next month on December 21st is Nancy. Okay. And if you want to read her book, she has a new book coming out. Do you have a book, Loreli?
No, I just started it. I've been very much procrastinating on.
It's hard. I'm starting one too.
Yes.
It's
And
hard.
what's interesting is that book is all about that you don't have to die to learn to live.
You're right. Good. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's what I'm writing. That's my
Good.
book.
That's a great title. And Nancy's book, if you want to get it before she comes, is 33 Souls That Talk to God. Is that it, Nancy? Can you unmute yourself? Nancy, can you unmute yourself?
Did she step away,
Okay.
maybe?
My step.
Okay, anyway, she wrote a book, 33 Souls That Talk to God. And you can find it on Amazon. I just found it. So we'll see her next month and we'll have a little December celebration maybe with a cheesecake.
What?
Don't say cheesecake around a Wisconsin girl.
I know. Mike is our resident cheese maker. Besides shooting off rockets every day.
Just about it.
That's his secret hobby is making cheesecake. Anyway,
Decompress and
well,
make
thank you again, Loreli. I really
You're
appreciate
welcome. Thank
it.
you again.
Text me your address, okay?
Okay.
Thank you.
You're
Bye-bye.
welcome.
Happy Thanksgiving.